Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, going to Knoxville to check on the Volunteers of Tennessee with Mike LaValle from Last Word on College Football. I ask that you subscribe to my YouTube channel for this very reason. I talk to the best bloggers and broadcasters in the nation on a regular basis, and of course, analysis from myself. You can catch the audio on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play. Mike, how you doing tonight?
Mark, doing great. Pleasure to be with you as always.
Yeah, it should be a fun discussion with the Vols with much work to do to climb out of the basement of the SEC Eastern Division after 8 straight losses last season. Jeremy Pruitt in play, and we can always talk about the difference in regimes we have in the past during the offseason, but now that they've taken hold in regards to actual football being played on the field and the boys at work, what are your impressions of the first half of Tennessee spring practice?
You know, Mark, yeah, like you said, we're in the third week now. We're exactly halfway through spring practice in Knoxville. It's pretty interesting to see the difference in the culture between the two coaching staffs. The spring game is April 21st. Like I said, we're halfway there, third week of practice. Some of the biggest changes in the culture there are it's very quiet, which is very different from the previous 5 years under Butch Jones. My first impression with Jeremy Pruitt is he's not that CEO type head coach. He's not a guy that wants to sit back and manage the media, market the program, and kind of manage his assistant coaches from a distance. He's very engaged. He's out there on the practice field. He's with the players. He's not too concerned about those CEO type tasks that a lot of the younger coaches are kind of going with. He's not very out there. He's not very in front of the media. He's not a PJ Fleck. He's not a Butch Jones. He's not one of those guys. Very focused on the field with the techniques, the X's and the O's, not any of the tertiary stuff off the field. So it's been pretty quiet. None of the coaches or the players who have talked to me have talked about individual players or X's and O's. They're just talking about generic things, the intensity of practice, getting better, all of that coach speak. So it seems like they are very focused. Not a lot of hype coming out of the Anderson training complex. They're also a little bit mum on the X's and O's. We think almost assuredly they're going to run a 3-4 defense with Jeremy Pruitt there and Kevin Shurer there, which would be a transition from last season. We think with Tyson Helton there coming from USC, they're going to run a more pro-style offense, but we don't quite know on the X's and O's front yet. So again, the biggest thing coming out of spring ball is how quiet it is, which is much different from the previous 5 years under Butch Jones. Jeremy Pruitt is obviously demanding and hard-nosed. That comes with him being down there right in the on the line of scrimmage with the players every day at practice. So that's also a little bit different. Some things to take away: position changes for the first half of the spring practice. They practiced several players at different positions. Most notably was Tyler Bird, who played on the offense last year. He was an All-American defensive back coming out of Miami, playing high school in Miami. Really showed out the year he was at the U.S. Army All-American Bowl here in San Antonio. Had a great interception, a block extra point that returned, and then ran away from the field there. Tennessee played him on the offense the previous 2 years. He's practicing at defensive back now, along with his high school teammate Carlin Fields, who was running back for Tennessee last year. He's also practicing the defensive backfield. Jaquan Blakely, who was a defensive lineman last year, has moved to tight end, which is going to be a position of need for Tennessee going into this spring ball and going into the 2018 season, particularly if they run a more pro-style offense. They're going to have to find an answer to backfill Ethan Wolf there. And then Princeton Font is moving from wide receiver tight end. He's practicing more at running back to kind of fill that third string position that Carlin Fields and me vacated by going over to the defensive back of the side. So, those are two storylines. The quarterback battle is also progressing. Jarrett Guarantano and Will McBride are practicing. Not a lot of news coming out of there. They both are kind of neck and neck, not really setting the world on fire. Guarantano does look noticeably bigger. So that'll be interesting to see if that changes his ability to run the offense and really get some first downs that Tennessee just couldn't get last year to sustain drives. But the important thing to remember on the quarterback battle is neither transfer J.T. Shroud or Keller Chris from Stanford is on campus yet. They're coming in this summer. Of course, Keller Chris was 11-2 as a starter at Stanford, so he is a proven commodity. So we certainly won't know anything definitive about the quarterback battle until we get late in fall camp. So you can't really read much into that here in the spring. And then the last thing is a couple of injuries. The most notable, Trey Smith at offensive line. One thing that Jeremy Pruitt has made sure to emphasize was that players will be ready to play at multiple positions within position groups. And defensive back, if you're a safety or a cornerback, you got to be able to play any of those 5 positions: safety, cornerback, or nickel back. Again, 3-4 defense is what they're likely going to play. You got to be able to play on the outsides or in the insides. And then on the offensive lineman, what he says is if the center goes down, the 6th best offensive lineman is going to come in, not the second string center. So all 5 of those guys have to play all 5 of those positions. Tennessee had a bad snap in every game last year, so that's actually a very appropriate analogy for him to make sure all 8, 9, 10 of those guys that can be in the rotation are able to snap the ball, whether it's under center or in shotgun formation, because that was just an absolute gut punch last year on several instances when they had drives going, threatening into the opponent's red zone. Several times last season, they had errant snaps that just killed drives. So that was actually a very appropriate analogy for him to make. So those are really the big 4 takeaways so far from spring practice: the changing culture, the position changes, the players being able to play all positions in a group, and then the quarterback battle. That's really what it looks like from Knoxville halfway through the spring game, halfway through spring practice.
Well, it's certainly a sensible objective to have along the offensive front, to have that next offensive lineman off the bench be the next guy in terms of talent, ability, and ability to step on the field and contribute right away, rather than have a weak link that's obvious just because that person is a guard, because these fronts, especially in the SEC, are so quick, strong, and able to break penetration into the backfield that you just, if you've got an obvious weak link, then that could easily, of course, be taken advantage of.
Yeah,
Talking Tennessee football? Yes.
Remember, this is the guy that last year took his All-American cornerback Mika Fitzpatrick and moved him to safety, and then went on to win another national championship. So he's clearly not afraid to take a guy and move him into a different position, no matter how much he's done previously.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a philosophy that goes way, way back to the Tex Schramm, Tom Landry days at the Dallas Cowboys, back when everybody was looking at their roster exclusively and saying, we need another defensive end, we need another inside linebacker, or at that point, a middle linebacker, versus, hey, let's take the best athletes. The best athletes should be on the field, and we'll figure out where they should be on the field.